Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
We're coming to you on day 3 of the Alberta teachers' strike. The nation is watching as 51,000 educators are out of the classroom, locked out as a matter of fact, and everybody, I think it's safe to say, wants to see that resolved, including a record number of Real Talkers who have been downloading this podcast and emailing the show to talk@ryanjespersen.com. In just a moment, one-on-one with Alberta Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides. We have received more questions for the Education Minister than we received for Prime Minister Mark Carney on the 10th of September. If that tells you anything. And our goal today here is to seek clarity, to understand better where the province is at right now in negotiations, in getting back to the bargaining table, in getting Alberta's teachers and students back into the classroom. We want you to hear from both perspectives here. The Alberta teachers, you heard from ATA President Jason Schilling on Monday. You'll hear the government perspective in just a bit, and we want you to be able to form an informed opinion on this. We want teachers to have their voice heard. We want the government to be able to communicate clearly to Albertans why they believe a deal has not yet been reached. First, if you missed our episode on the 6th of October with ATA President Jason Schilling, here's a summary of what he had to say. Strikes aren't always personal, but this one feels like it is.
Well, my colleagues, when I talk to them, they're burning out. They're at the end of their rope with a lot of things. We shouldn't be putting kids and teachers in these situations. We shouldn't be shortchanging everything. People shouldn't have to balance out where we can have the help for some so that the others don't get it as well. It is personal for teachers because they put their heart and soul into their work. They became teachers because they want to make a difference. And now they're navigating the classrooms that are complex without resources and all of these other policies that have been added on top, like a book ban, curriculum without resources. They're dealing with a lot of things on their plates and they're asking for help. And they feel like the government is just not listening.
The government is just not listening. It's personal. That from the teachers. Now, the government doing what it can to get its message out to Albertans as well. You're not going to have 20,000 MLAs demonstrating outside the Alberta legislature. Logistically, it's impossible. So how is the government putting its message in front of the population? With this.
Smaller class sizes, more pay, and even better student outcomes. This is what we all want for our students, our teachers, and parents. When it comes to the bargaining table, the Alberta government's current offer would see 3,000 more teachers hired and a 12% pay increase, plus market adjustments up to 17% to reflect the value of their work. With 3,000 extra teachers, classrooms get smaller, students get more attention, and those with complex needs get the support they need to learn. And the proposed pay increase matches what 83 other unions, including the United Nurses of Alberta, have accepted. That's why Alberta's government has invested $8.6 billion to build and renovate more than 130 schools. This is more than any provincial government has invested in the history of our province. This offer on the table gives our hardworking teachers the highest take-home pay in Western Canada. With the 12% raise, the average teacher will be making $12,000 more per year, meaning the average Alberta teacher takes home $107,000 a year after provincial taxes. This total investment would cost the government over $2.3 billion. But even during a time of fiscal challenge, it's all about giving Alberta students the support they need to continue leading the country in reading, science, creative thinking, and financial literacy rankings. More teachers, more pay, smaller class sizes. Now that's a good deal that keeps kids in the classroom. The ATA has been given a fair deal, and we're asking teachers to say yes.
Okay, so there's the government's position. There's your primer. You've heard from both sides. Ms. KD, hot out of the gates in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I want to hear from the teachers. not the people making the decisions. Well, Miss Katie, we have a stack of emails of questions submitted by Alberta teachers, and you will hear from them today. Let's hear from Alberta's Education Minister, Demetrios Nicolaides. Minister, thanks for making yourself available today. ATA President Jason Schilling tells this show 48 hours ago that this strike is personal for the 51,000 teachers that are out of the classroom right now. Is it personal for you too?
Well, I have kids as well, kids in elementary, so certainly dealing with those dynamics. And, I don't disagree with a lot of, the clip that you just showed previously with President Schilling. I don't disagree with a lot of what he said. There's no question teachers are dealing with higher complexity in their classroom. There's no question that we're seeing more students in our classrooms. We recognize these challenges, and we're ready, willing, and able to make some movement here. As you mentioned with the government ad there, we've committed to hiring 3,000 more teachers, hiring more EAs, and increasing teacher pay so that we can work on addressing these challenges. I know our teachers pour their heart and soul into providing the best possible education for our kids. They work extremely hard and under challenging conditions these past few years, as our province has really been pummeled by a significant increase in population. They've certainly had to do a lot more in their everyday activities. And if just having more kids wasn't enough, the complexity of those kids has also increased as we've seen more refugee students and more students who speak English as a second language. So, we understand the frustration, and we're happy to work with our teachers so that we can address these issues. I don't think the strike is helpful. I don't think it's productive. It's putting kids out of the classroom. They should be in the classroom learning, and we can continue talking and hammer out the best possible deal.
Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides, our guest in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Minister, if there are shared perspectives, if there are shared values, what have been the sticking points? How did it get to this point?
Well, as you know, of course, the last proposal that both sides agreed on, I just want to comment on that. We had discussed between the ATA union leadership, the executive, a couple of pieces, and they were satisfied with our position. We were satisfied with their position, and we were both in agreement. They, of course, took that proposal to their members. Their members rejected it, and the union leadership proceeded to a strike. So I don't think that's productive. If their members were dissatisfied with the proposal that they brought forward, that's fine. Let's see a different iteration. Let's see what is required to help us land a deal. And the union leadership, of course, hasn't provided us with any further details. We are asking them to go back, talk to their members. They didn't like the last deal very clearly. Totally understandable. But go back, talk to their members, and come back to the table with what you'd like to see so that we can keep moving forward.
We got an email from Vera to talk@ryanjespersen.com. She says, relating to hiring 1,000 teachers per year for the remaining term of the contract, 3 years, 3,000 teachers, says it's not even enough to make a dent. Vera says it's also disingenuous because the government refuses to articulate to what end the teachers will be hired. Teachers in Alberta want clear language committed to working toward a student-teacher ratio or class size caps. She says, we understand that reducing class sizes in some cases from more than 40 may not be possible immediately, but there must be commitment from government to do so at least incrementally. Building new schools and hiring new teachers is necessary, but we can't keep chasing our tails. She says standards have to be put in place. If teachers aren't fairly compensated, continue to be disrespected, who will staff all these new schools that the government says it'll build? What would you say to Vera?
Well, to Vera, I would say, we're trying to work as aggressively and as quickly as we can. The province got really hit with a significant increase in population. 2023 was a record year in all aspects, the largest ever recorded population increase from net migration, also the largest increase in immigration, and overall the largest increase in population that this province has ever seen. So it's very unique circumstances and challenges. We totally understand and see that this is putting immense pressure on our schools. And we're happy to work with our teachers to hire more teachers, hire more EAs. The 3,000 teachers, this was brought forward, of course, by the Alberta Teachers Association. We accepted their recommendation to hire 3,000 teachers, and that will make a meaningful impact into the classroom. Of course, we fund our education system based on enrollment. So as enrollment increases, we continue to fund those additional students that come into our system. And of course, that unlocks additional funding to help hire more and more teachers over the years. So we are committed to hiring more teachers. We are committed to hiring more EAs and increasing teacher pay. And I don't think this strike is necessary. Let's get kids back in the classroom. We can keep talking and hammer out a way for us to move forward.
Minister, we heard from an Edmonton principal who was dismayed shortly after our interview with ATA President Schilling that they had been locked out. And she explained to me that there are many educational assistants and other professionals that are not impacted by the strike, and this will impact them. She said it'll also likely limit access to their emails, other communication tools, and resources. What's the thinking behind locking them out?
Sure. The lockout, of course, is a response to the strike of the teachers that has been announced, and simply to help ensure that we put all efforts towards getting a resolution as quickly as possible, so that we can get our kids back into the classroom. That's where they need to be. They need to be learning. They need to be in front of their teachers, who, of course, have the best possible expertise in implementing our curriculum. That's where they need to be. That's where we want them to be. So let's make sure that we are able to get a deal as quickly as possible, and that's the intent behind the lockout.
You do have the option of ordering teachers back to work, right? What goes into that consideration? Is there a time limit, a line drawn in the sand where that would happen?
Sure. We do have that ability for sure. The government does have a variety of legislative and legal mechanisms that we can implement to direct teachers back to work. In terms of a line in the sand, teachers do have a right to strike. That's been recognized, of course, by the Supreme Court, and we want to make sure that's honored as teachers have decided to pursue that avenue. However, we are concerned if there is irreparable harm that is being caused to students due to a lack of ability to receive their education and continue with their education. That would be a significant line in the sand for us. So we'll have to evaluate things on a day-by-day basis. We do have some back-channel conversations open, and I'm very hopeful that we can just sit back at the table. Like as I've mentioned, we're looking to hire more teachers, more EAs, and increase teacher pay. And I'm confident that we're very close and that we can hammer this out if we can simply get back to the table.
Are we talking like 2 weeks? Are we talking a month? Are we talking, 2 months from now? I mean, where is that line for you in your mind?
Yeah, certainly. I think, if we're 2 months out and the strike is still ongoing, I think we would certainly have passed the point of irreparable harm to kids. So I think we'll have to continue looking at the timeline and continue looking at the dynamics here and make a decision when and if it's necessary.
Don wants to know if you would be confident heading into binding arbitration.
Well, this is something that we'll have to look at. As I mentioned, we have a variety of different legal mechanisms. Many other unions have accepted proposals that are almost identical to the one that we're offering here, if not completely identical to the one that we're offering teachers. The nurses have accepted a 12% increase over 4 years, Alberta Union of Provincial Employees, other unions. So there is a precedent that the salary increase that we're offering in the context of the economic situation that we're in is fair and is reasonable. Not to mention as well that after, should this 12% be accepted, Alberta teachers would have the highest take-home pay in Western Canada, which puts them in a very strong position. We do want to generously compensate our teachers, and I think this proposal helps to achieve that. Under this proposal, if it was accepted, a first-time teacher with no experience would earn $70,000 on the first day walking into the door. So I think that this is very fair, very reasonable. And in terms of binding arbitration, again, we have a variety of different legal mechanisms and legislative mechanisms, and we'll implement those if we have to.
I would imagine you're keeping an eye on what's happening in BC and Saskatchewan, right? Like a 12% increase obviously would see Alberta teachers paid higher. than teachers in both of those provinces, but just temporarily. The BC teachers contract expiring in June 2025 already. They're presently negotiating for higher salaries. Saskatchewan teachers contract, as you know, expires this coming August. Many teachers have also pointed out that educators in Saskatchewan and BC enjoy currently class size caps. They say more prep time. They say less assignable time and clear language with respect to classroom complexity and students with exceptional needs. Do you acknowledge those differences? Are those factors at play? Are those fair points coming from the teacher's side?
Well, those are differences for sure. And again, I think that the union leadership, President Schilling and others, need to go back and talk to their members and bring forward some additional proposals. The last proposal that was brought forward was a proposal brought forward by the Alberta Teachers Association, asked for a 1.5% increase at the top of the grid, a grid harmonization, and free COVID shots for their members, for teachers. We agreed to many of those pieces, and the ATA was satisfied and took that proposal to their members for ratification, which ultimately failed. I'm a little perplexed as to why the union leadership is asking for free COVID shots when clearly we have challenges associated to complexity, when teachers are looking for government support in that area, and we're receiving proposals that are asking for free COVID shots. So
why not, though? Why wouldn't we make COVID shots available to teachers in classrooms?
Yeah, we didn't have a problem with it, and we agreed with that point, and we did provide that. But it made me scratch my head, to be honest. I said, why is the ATA union leadership asking for this? We have more significant issues with respect to classroom conditions, violence, aggression, complexity, more refugee students, more students with English as additional language. So why I couldn't understand why the union is asking for free COVID shots. But we took their proposal. We said yes to many of the pieces that they asked for. Their members, of course, rejected it and then proceeded to strike.
So it sounds like you acknowledge that there are huge complexities at play, that Alberta teachers are probably more stressed, or at least more pressed now than ever before. What does it tell you when literally tens of thousands of Albertans turn out of these rallies? What does it say to you? How does it land with you when teachers say that they're feeling disrespected, that they're disheartened, that leaders, principals are telling us that they're afraid that they might lose some of their bright young talent? I mean, in real life, how does that land with you as minister?
Well, I am disappointed when I hear, that teachers feel that they're disrespected. We strongly respect our teachers. We value them tremendously. We've provided a 10% increase in education operating expenses over the last 3 budgets. We've made an $8.6 billion commitment to build 200,000 student spaces. In the last budget, I increased funding for the classroom complexity grant. I changed the funding formula to help inject more funding into the classroom faster. So we're listening, we're addressing concerns. And I should mention as well, of course, there are a lot of concerns with respect to aggression and violence in the classroom. And in June, I convened a task force to investigate aggression, complexity, and inclusion in the classroom. So we're listening very carefully to what teachers are experiencing, but more importantly, we're taking action. So it does dishearten me when teachers say that they feel that they're disrespected. I'm happy to continue to listen more if I need to, but we're taking action on these pieces. And again, we have to recognize that Alberta is in a very unique situation. We received a significant population increase in 2023. So I understand full well that classrooms are growing. There's no question. We wouldn't have announced an $8.6 billion initiative to build and modernize 130 schools if we didn't think we need the space. We know we need the space. We see that we need the space. We're committed to building those additional classrooms, hiring more teachers, addressing complexity, policy, and providing more support. So we want to work on all of these issues, and we are. And so we just need to, my concern is that this degenerates into a lot of rhetoric and finger pointing, which I don't think is going to be helpful. I saw when President Schilling was on, he called the government advertising a smear campaign, and you showed it here. I don't know what part of that could be construed as smearing teachers. And so, and as well, President Schilling, when he was on, made comments that, we want to privatize the education system, or that we're deliberately defunding public education. I mean, this is utter nonsense. And it's not conducive to creating a climate where we can work together to address the problems that our kids need. Because that's what's most important at the end of the day, is making sure that our kids have the right support in our schools. So driving up rhetoric in this manner that I saw the other day it's not helpful at all.
Minister, I'll let the audience know we're at our time cap. Can I have 3 more minutes of your time? Can you spare 3 minutes for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we're talking about private schools, more emails about that, I would suggest, than many of the other subjects we've ever received. I'll read Elizabeth's here quickly. Says, as a taxpayer, she says, I'm appalled at how much of my money is being used to prop up the private school system. Why are any tax dollars, she says, being wasted on what she believes should be a privately funded system? It strikes me that many Albertans feel as though there's a double standard in how the government is supporting private schools versus how it's supporting public schools. What would you tell the province?
I would say first and foremost that supporting private schools is something that is a nonpartisan issue. Governments of different stripes in this province have supported independent private schools. Even the NDP, when they were in office, continued to provide funding to support independent private schools. And I think it's important that we continue to provide options and opportunities for Albertans. I know of a significant number of independent private schools that work to support students with severe disabilities, that work to support students with autism, with ADHD, with other learning disabilities, and to suggest that those students should not receive funding because they've elected to pursue a different avenue and pay on top of it. I think there's a broader question there, but we absolutely support the idea of parents being able to make the final decision about where their kids go to school, and that we provide students with funding opportunities in order to be able to do that.
Okay, you and I would probably both acknowledge that private schools also have the luxury of picking and choosing who they accept, which I think is a sticking point for a lot of people.
True, but I think we have to make an important, we have to understand the dynamic of our independent schools. There is possibly a mischaracterization that whenever you say the word, independent private school, you're talking about an elite institution that is charging $25,000, $30,000 a year tuition and actively selecting the students. Now, it's not to say that there aren't schools like that. Of course there are, but a lot of the independent private schools as well are providing programming for religious and or cultural communities. We have private Sikh schools, Islamic schools, Christian schools. We have private independent schools that are providing programming, as I mentioned, for students with severe disabilities, like, for example, Renfrew Educational Services or Calgary Academy, that's specifically only for students with learning disabilities. So they are providing unique programming to students that have severe needs and are being supported in the best possible way. So to just pull the rug out from under them, I don't know how that would be helpful.
Okay, a 2-part question to close. Number one, I think that most Albertans are probably keen to know day by day, as they're adjusting their schedules, as they're finding places to place their kids, as they're hosting kids in their homes or opening up summer camps, where are the state of negotiations? What do the communication channels look like right now, like as you and I are talking? And ultimately, are you concerned that the longer that this goes, that this does harm Alberta's reputation nationally and beyond?
Well, I'm concerned first and foremost that the longer this goes on, the longer students are out of the classroom and the longer their learning is impacted. We're listening very carefully to the needs of our education system. We're responding. More importantly, as I mentioned, we're building schools. We're increasing funding to support students with complex needs. We can continue to have those conversations without the strike. So I'm very concerned that student learning is being disrupted here. And in terms of communication, we are having some back channel communications, but we are inviting the ATA to come back to the table. We're asking them to schedule some formal dates so that we can actually have conversations again. That's our position as government. We're extending that open invitation. We want the ATA to respond and come back to the table so that we can talk further and hammer this out.
Okay, Minister, thanks for your availability. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
Okay, that's Alberta's Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides joining us ahead of obviously government business, hence the relatively shorter interview. I see Sharon is in our live chat right now. She says, oh my gosh, I can't even keep up with the chat. It's on fire right now. The Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. We're going to jump into that. We're going to get to your emails. This is what we will be talking about today. You know, Canada's Prime Minister also in the Oval Office with the President of the United States less than 24 hours ago. We're going to talk about that today too, but this is day 3 of the Alberta teacher strike, and that is where we will focus our attention. Real Talkers, you have the floor in just a moment. You can leave a comment if you're watching or listening to this live in our chat, or you can always send us an email to our inbox, monitored all the time, including through the live stream at talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people, so you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
Kubi Renewable Energy completing more than 5,700 solar installations across Western Canada, if you can believe it, earning the trust of homeowners and businesses who want a reliable partner in their renewable energy journey. You know, a lot of people are going to be considering solar, considering going green, and you know that you have choices. So what truly sets Kubi apart? Well, it's its technical first mindset. This is a company grown in Alberta, celebrating 10 years right now. The company built by certified electricians and engineers, not salespeople. And that means that every single system is designed and installed with precision, safety, and long-term performance in mind. The focus always on delivering quality solar solutions that are built to last. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting Kubi online at kubi.ca. That's KUBY.ca. Our friends at North Road Investment Council have a message for established professionals or business owners asking the big financial questions, like should I be paying myself in dividends or salary, or should I be putting savings into a TFSA or an RRSP, or maybe leaving investment inside the corporation for eventual retirement. You know, the team at North Road wants you to know there's another option that may be worth your consideration. If you're a real talker whose business is earning more than $200,000 annually, if you're over the age of 40, you should probably look at the individual pension plan. That's the IPP, a powerful retirement strategy that can provide higher tax-deferred savings over RRSPs, along with some other valuable features, but it's not for everyone. You can download a plain language, very clear white paper on the IPP on North Road's website. That's northroadic.com. North Road Investment Council. Several things set them apart, and you can learn more again at northroadic.com. That's northroadic.com. And our friends at California Closets reminding you that as you get set to head into those winter months, you're going to start pulling out the Halloween decorations. After that, it's going to be the holiday decor, and you may realize that your storage solutions just aren't cutting it. Whether it's a beautiful storage room, a laundry room, or maybe that custom closet you've always dreamed of, nobody does it better than California Closets, a proudly Canadian-owned and operating company that manufactures everything they install right here in Alberta. It all starts with a free design consultation. You've got nothing to lose. You can book that consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. We have a ton to get to as Real Talkers are engaged on this one, including Jillian, who says in all caps, the government refused to negotiate with teachers on class size caps. She said that was not in good faith. A lot of you considering that free COVID shot as part of those negotiations. Johnny, I don't know if you remember, we had an email from a Real Talker, a teacher, that told us a couple of days ago, she said the reason that she voted no on the deal had nothing to do with her salary. She said it had everything to do with the fact that the COVID shot was even an issue. Kathy says in our chat, kids are walking petri dishes. They're sick all the time. The least that we can do is help protect the teachers so that they can be in the classroom teaching. Nia says, yet another task force. Thanks so much. She says, oh yeah, we all know how unbiased these government task forces are. Now, we want to hear from both sides of the coin here. We want to hear from where Albertans are at, because this is something that's impacting you. This is something that's affecting you. If you're a student right now, if you're one of our younger audience members, maybe you're in high school, you're feeling most likely some uncertainty. In particular, if you're in grade 12, about what this year could look like. If you're a teacher, we're hearing from a ton of you. Some of you writing us emotionally. Some of you telling us you have tears in your eyes while you're sending these emails. You want to be back in the classrooms. And we're hearing from Albertans, too, that are acknowledging the fiscal reality that the province is staring down right now. The fact that oil prices aren't where Alberta typically needs them to be. The fact that we've evolved from several months ago talking about a surplus position to being in a deficit position. Chris wrote into the show to talk@ryanjespersen.com, said, as a concerned parent, teacher, and taxpayer, I'm writing to ask that we seek clarity on issues that are deeply affecting Alberta classrooms. Says, I've seen in recent interviews the minister, Nicolaides, stating that research shows smaller class sizes or improved student-teacher ratios do not improve student learning outcomes, but this remains one of the top priorities for teachers across the province. The government's been quite clear that it's a central focus in current bargaining. Chris says those of us that are working in and supporting public education see firsthand the impact of overclouded classrooms on both students and teachers. Albertans deserve transparency and evidence-based reasoning behind decisions, who can argue with that, by the way, so that directly affecting our children's learning conditions is not the end result here. Chris says, thanks for continuing to hold leaders accountable across the board. Thank you for providing a platform for these important conversations. A ton of you writing in about private schools, and I have told you before, it's not something I disclose. It's a part of my story. I'm a student, a graduate of private schools. I'm a graduate of public schools, and I want to see the issue from sides that I can relate to and sides that I can understand. Minister Nicolaides laying out the government's position there, why they believe that it's prudent, why they believe it's appropriate for Alberta to fund private schools to 70%, higher than any other province. And I understand from other Albertans' perspective why you'd like to see private schools funded less. It seems to work in other provinces. Parents do have a choice, but you argue to us that part of that choice can be ponying up for that private tuition. And of course, when all of this is seen in the perspective of available funds and where they're allocated, and especially at a time that is supercharged emotionally right now, I get it. I get why this is a more contentious issue than it may otherwise seem, at least at times of labor certainty. Sean wrote in to us to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Says Alberta is one of Canada's richest provinces, yet we have the lowest funding per student for public education. Money is being funneled away from public schools that are accessible to all children, regardless of their educational needs, their economic status, or their religious beliefs, into private schools that can pick and choose who they allow to attend. He says, I don't know how we can support the government's current position on education funding. He says, I'd like to see my MLA look a child and their parents in the eyes and tell them they don't deserve a proper education because they have a learning disability, because their parents don't make enough money to afford tutors or private schools to get them the assistance that they agree. Dara wrote into the show. We're going to get to as many of these as we possibly can, Real Talkers. We want you to know that your voice is heard on this show, and that's not limited to one perspective. This is a forum for fulsome conversation. This is a forum for debate. Our priority here on Real Talk is to see Alberta's students supported, to see Alberta's teachers supported, and to see both of them back in the classrooms, to see Alberta operating at a level fiscally that it can afford, to see public sector employees rewarded for their service and in comparable situations that they may otherwise seek in the private sector. Because let's not make the mistake of assuming that just because educators have committed to the classrooms that they serve, because they've invested in their post-secondary education, that they won't leave the profession or that they won't leave the province. The longer that this goes, the more of a concern that could be. And while I acknowledge that many of you are writing into the chat that 3,000 teachers over 3 years, considering 2,100 schools in need, is just a drop in the bucket, I, as a parent, I, as an Albertan, can't help but wonder how that problem could potentially become exacerbated, become worse, if some teachers, if some administrators decide that it's just no longer worth it. Dara writes into the show and says, I'm a parent to a publicly schooled child. I'm also a teacher. And Dara says, and I'm the president of my community league, if that helps get my question read on Real Talk. Dara says an overwhelming 89.5% of teachers rejected what this government had to offer, and somehow this lack of governance is being pitted on a union. She says it's important to note that teachers most often bargain primarily for improved working conditions over improved salaries. And while both are necessary and fair for the profession, it is how students and teachers are supported within the public system that matters the most. Dara says the numbers show that our public school per student is the lowest in Canada. And this is something, as you've noticed, if you're listening or watching, that is a recurring theme in how the public perceives this strike to be. Now, Dara's obviously invested on two fronts here as a teacher and a parent. She says the per student private school funding, as I've just pointed out, is the highest. Dara says Ontario has class cap sizes of 20 students for K-3. A bill is being tabled for class size caps in 4 to 8, and the provincial average, as everyone can read at ontario.ca, for high school students 9 to 12 is 24 and a half students. Collective agreements in Quebec and BC for K-3 also support a class cap size of 20 students. BC caps classes in grades 4 to 12 at 30. She says in a maximum of 3 IPPs per class that have exceeded, teachers are provided, guaranteed, with extra prep time and additional compensation. She says this legislation is supported by the Supreme Court of Canada. Dara says, now, according to Stats Canada, there are approximately 415,000 teachers in Canada, with more than 300,000 of them dealing with or addressing classroom complexity, class cap sizes, and adequate compensation in their contracts, working within systems with higher per student funding. Dara says, my colleagues and I would like to know, in light of the majority of Canadian teachers working under contractually mandated better working conditions, why this government falls back on gaslighting us when the majority of teachers across Canada, along with them, we in Alberta have been calling for those same classroom caps, for supports for increasing classroom complexities. The minister touched on that. And fair wages for years. Why is the government claiming that it doesn't understand what is required to end this strike? Katie wrote in, an educator from Calgary, my hometown, said, I want to thank you for welcoming our ATA president to Real Talk. She said, I'm seeing the effects of cuts and restructuring within healthcare, says Katie. Families needing to work harder and longer to meet basic needs. Young kids coming into school without having accessed early intervention supports. She says things like accredited specialized preschools that could maybe facilitate connections with appropriate specialists. Katie says advocating for these services takes time, and it's hard to do when you're balancing it all. So when these young kids are coming into schools, we're starting the process that should start when these kids are 2 or 3 years old. Katie says also some of these services that are provided are moving virtually to make it more accessible, but these are all motor skill building supports. She said these need to be done in 3D. Nia, in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, says the minister just made the point that they're funding schools for special needs, but they're not funding the public schools